J.K. Dobbins out for the season. Does that mean next man up or running back by committee? The loss of J.K. Dobbins to a torn ACL on Saturday night shocked the fantasy community, as we were expecting big things from J.K. Dobbins this season, and rightfully so. Look at the offense that this guy was on in 2020. A offense that ran the ball 555 times, ran the ball better than any other offense in the NFL. And an offense that, losing Mark Ingram, lost 79 touches of rushing. But now, losing J.K. Dobbins, we're talking about 206 vacated touches from last year. That's 37% of the Ravens' rushing attempts from 2020, and 1,104 yards of their production just gone. Now it's supposed to be next man up, right? Well, I mean, when we talk about the production lost, let's take a look at what Dobbins did in his rookie season. 800 yards on just 134 carries, a crazy 6 yards per carry. That's absolutely insane. That's not rushing production that you just automatically replace. You don't just have guys that can produce like that at the NFL level just throughout your roster. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was proficient in the passing game, but that wasn't his main role. His main role was being a playmaker in the rushing game, and he did that with ease, it seemed like, after taking basically over the main guy role in Baltimore after the bye week. So basically from week 8 on, this guy was a monster for the Baltimore Ravens. He scored touchdowns in the last 6 games he played in, and and we're talking about a guy that still could have gotten a little bit more work in the passing game. There was a lot of room for Dobbins to grow in his second season, especially when you talk about, once again, Mark Ingram and his 79 touches from last season gone. We could have seen a decent handful of those, 40, 50, maybe even all of those go to Dobbins this year and see a real workload, a real workhorse out of the Baltimore Ravens. Well, that's not gonna happen. Or is it? When we talk about Gus the Bus Edwards, Gus has been stuck behind a guy like Mark Ingram ever since he became in the league. We're talking about a guy that's still pretty young. He's only been in the league for 3 years, and he was overshadowed by J.K. Dobbins last year, but he's not just a jag. This is not just a guy that's a plotter. We're talking about a guy that's been over 5 yards a carry in his entire career. That's over 400 touches. I'm sorry, guys, you don't get 400 touches in the NFL and average 5 yards a carry, and you're just a jag. Gus Edwards is pretty damn good. And then we talk about a guy that he's averaged 10 yards a catch in the passing game. That's better than any of the other running backs on the roster. This guy's actually done better in the passing game than the other running backs. This is not a bad all-around guy. He's just been overshadowed by Mark Ingram, who's been in the league forever, that veteran. And then we talk about the high-octane flashiness of Dobbins. Well, you know what? There's something to what Gus Edwards does, but we're also talking about a guy last year that had over 130 touches himself. And how many more touches is Harbaugh going to give him of those 206 touches? There's still going to be touches to go around after Gus Edwards. We're not talking about just Gus Edwards in this offense now. We're talking about the possibility of other running backs being utilized, being useful, being flex-worthy in the Baltimore Ravens offense, because there's still going to be probably well over 100, probably 120 to 140 touches to go around after what Gus gets. So we're talking about other guys on this roster. What about Justice Hill? This guy's been on in the NFL for 2 years, but he's really not done much with what he's had. There's not much to go on. He's supposed to be the big play guy in the receiving game. He's supposed to be your third down back. He's still only got 9.9 yards per reception. Granted, not a lot to work with, but we're talking about a guy that's still averaging 3 yards less per reception than Gus Edwards. I don't know what Justice Hill is going to bring to your team or to this roster. That, in Baltimore, they're talking about this guy. He had his position basically locked up because he's one of the best guys in special teams. He's a special teams guy on this roster. He's not necessarily there for his prowess in the backfield. And that's where I get interested in a guy like Taysom Williams. This guy has been making noise this preseason. There are some Taysom Williams truthers out there. If you go ahead and you check out the Twitterverse and you just go ahead and search Taysom Williams, there are some people out there that truly believe in this guy. And honestly, he's had a really, really, really good preseason. This guy's averaged 5 yards per carry. Highlights are pretty fun to watch. He's caught all 8 of his targets in the passing game, so he's not just some dude that has brick hands. He's not just in between the tackles guy. This guy, I think, is a person who can really kind of maybe take that 1B role behind Gus Edwards and really maybe cement himself as a guy who through the season could end up being a flex-worthy guy. Am I saying rush out, grab this guy, and stick him in your roster? Hell no, I'm not doing that. But I am saying this is a guy that I'm sticking on my watch list that maybe in a deep draft or a 16-team league, as somebody I definitely will take a flyer on because he does have an opportunity for touches. Granted, he's not on the roster yet, and that's also part of the problem here. We're talking about these 53-man rosters haven't been settled, but he was kind of on the bubble with the loss of J.K. Dobbins. We're probably talking about this guy's role being cemented in, and like I said, I think this is going to be the second guy up behind Gus Edwards as far as pounding the rock in between the tackles. Maybe he's not going to be as much involved in the passing game. Maybe that's going to be more Justice Hill, but I still think he's going to be the most valuable back behind Gus Edwards that's on this roster now. And then we talk about the rumor mill. Let's get into the rumor mill, guys. Everybody loves talking about rumors. We're talking about Todd Gurley, obviously. He's already been into talk with the Baltimore Ravens earlier this offseason, and he left without a contract. That's probably because he didn't like what his role would be in this offense. Let's face it. Let's take a look at what this guy was in his first 4 seasons in the league. He was amazing. This guy was a fucking all-star. He was out of this world. The problem being, he fell off the last 2 years. Now let's move into the 2019 season, the 2020 season, see what he did those couple years, and you see the fall off. And we've heard the rumors, we've heard his knees aren't right, that he's basically got arthritis at this point. A little young to have it, but that seems to be the rumor. I mean, this guy's had nothing but problems with his knees since he's entered the league. He was able to work through it after his rookie season and the ACL tear and come back for 3 amazing years of production. But when a running back falls off, a running back falls off. And we're talking about a guy in Todd Gurley that just basically had production fall off a cliff. They gave him lots of opportunities in Atlanta, and he did look like a jag at that point. They gave him plenty of opportunities. He just didn't look like Todd Gurley. He just looked like some guy. Just a guy. And that's what I think Todd Gurley is at this point. Like, is he supposed to overtake Gus Edwards 5 yards per carry? Let's take a look at what he's done in the passing game. What he's done in the passing game, overrated, 6.6 yards per reception over the last 2 seasons. That's not going to cut it. Guess what? That's not any better than any other running back on this roster. And when you're talking about the NFL, when you're done, you're done. And these other guys that are still on the roster have shown major potential in comparison to what Todd Gurley has put on film these last 2 seasons. So I'm hoping that they just go with the guys they get, or they go out there and they find a couple of these other guys that will be released over the next couple days when rosters are solidified by Tuesday, and they find somebody else. But there are much better options. We're talking about the easiest position in the NFL to replace, and you don't need to go and get an aging, failing all-star. Now, I do think this also leads to more opportunities for a guy like LaMar Jackson. This leads to more opportunities in the passing game as well. You don't know. Maybe they shift that balance a little bit more towards the passing attack, but my guess is not. If anything, I think they sink their teeth into the rushing game a little bit more this season, making these backs even more valuable, making a guy like Taysom Williams a guy you really want to watch, because guess what? All of their wide receivers have basically been injured most of preseason. We're talking about a guy in Sammy Watkins who's been injured for multiple weeks. We talk about a guy in Marquise Brown who hasn't been on the field basically all training camp. And then we talk about a guy we're just talking about an injured wide receiving core. I think obviously that's going to be good for Mark Andrews, but Rashad Bateman still dealing with that core injury. He had a surgery. Like, he's not scheduled back yet. We don't know when he's going to be back on the field. This passing attack is going to struggle. They're going to lean into the running game. So that'll be good for Lamar, getting some extra work on the ground, but that's going to be really good for Gus. That's going to be really good for Williams. And, honestly, I think Gurley's just going to be average if they actually end up signing this guy. So looking forward to Gus being a high-end RB2 in standard. I think this guy's going to be really good in standard, but I think PPR, you got to temper your expectations. These guys have not been super involved in the passing game. I don't necessarily anticipate that to change. Running quarterbacks don't get the running backs involved in the passing game too often. So when we talk about these guys in PPR format, I still think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to be mid-range. Gus mid-range running back too. Maybe Williams can squeeze into that flex range. Maybe Justice Hill can. Maybe Hill ends up claiming that 3-down role. But I really think this is going to be Edwards. I really think Williams finds a way to carve out a role in this backfield. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Share for continued fantasy football coverage.